October 12th, 2012 saw the release of Dishonored from Arkane and published by Bethesda. My name is Couch Cooper and we're going to be looking at that original Dishonored, Dishonored 2, potentially 3. We're going to talk about the situation. This is an original trailer at 720, barely 30 frames per second on its launch all those years ago. I made my own, hold my prime. Casuals, be gone. I think we might be safe. What the hell is this? You don't do unboxings? Well, I kept hold of this Xbox 360 game. I used to collect them, but it just got out of hand with the size and the cost of them all. I kept a few of the special editions, this one being one of them. It comes with a pack of tarot cards and a weird game. It was really cool though, and I remember getting it day one. I was very excited about Dishonored. I think I had every right to be. Years previous we'd seen the release of Bioshock 1 and 2. Single player campaigns had never been so strong. This video is also about world building, technically. There's been quite a lot of talk on social media, a lot of retconning's been going on, and a lot of lore in beloved franchises, IPs, different media. It's kind of getting meddled around with. I think it's very important to set in stone your video game world and keep those pillars in place, and this is certainly a great place for the franchise to start. Rapture-like opening, you've got killer rats running around, and that was something that was pushed as a mechanic front quarter of the first game, but wasn't really pulled up on too much towards end and mid, and the second game comes through with a completely different antagonist creature. You want to see what multiple 10th generation rats look like, I strongly recommend you hop on over to my Plague's Tale PlayStation 5 quality mode video. That thing will blow your eyes off. Talking of having your eyes blown off, if you're going to do segues like that, I'm going to leave with the casuals. That's the only one. The graphics on this game have been upped, and playing it on high it defaults to a lower aspect ratio. I had to switch it manually onto 1080, but it's beautifully crisp, and of course we get 60 frames per second. Did not see that on the 360, and that was the last place I played this game. So what is Dishonored? Well, it's kind of like a Thief clone. That does not help me at all. I think stealth adventure is the best way to describe it, and Arkane really took it upon themselves to create an immersive universe. This hub, getting to the pub at the start of the game originally, was something I will never forget, and it still hangs really strong as a game in memory. Getting to see the colours and detail and all the characters again was a real nostalgia rush. That's also the second reason for the video, alongside the world building excellence that I want to make an example of, and that's where we're up to with Arkane at the moment. They have kind of joined forces more with Bethesda on a development level. They've been put under their wing, so to speak, on a publishing and distribution level. We've seen a game called fuck is its name? Redfall. I was gonna say Metaphor, can you believe? Which has just not performed. I've played it briefly. It was not working when I logged into it, and it didn't have a very good optimization going on. And maybe I'll go back to it because they've patched the hell out of it. But my point being, is nothing on Dishonored.
Oh, I'll find.
As a Sony legacy owner, there's not even schadenfreude there with the failure of Redfall. It's a little bit like the special kid at school falling over. It's funny for like the first 5 years, but when they still do it without you tripping them up, you sort of lose enthusiasm. Microsoft and Xbox, they really need a win, and I thought Redfall might well just make it. It's almost like it's being developed and made by Nicolas Cage. That's the nearest thing I can get to it. There's also this big psychology of Gen Z, or the younger generation, millennials even, not purchasing brand new games, going back to legacy stuff from the 2000s, even from earlier, to get that sort of cool design fix, because the stuff that's churned out now is not on par with even material that came out. I would go to 2019, 2018. If you look on paper, it was one of the golden years for that 9th generation system. God of War, Spider-Man 1, Monster Hunter World, Red Dead Redemption 2, it was absolutely crazy. It was also absolutely crazy, that's it, I'm leaving, how much I got back into this and how well it held up on a content level against loads of stuff that I'm playing that came out in the last couple of years. It's got an impeccable detection system, the teleportation method just feels flawless, fluid and extremely natural, and when you start clanging swords, it's like a goddamn first person Sekiro. You got to get the timed parry in, you've got to go for the next stabs, you can even build moves. There's so much to develop with all of the key arrows and different sleep darts and incendiary stuff. I was like, wow, we really have moved into a creative drought with single player material on this level.
What's going on?
Doing a number of quite cool things on the sly. It's not giving you a mini-map, so that's not giving you any detection cones for the enemy AI, but you do get these funny like shock arrows, giving them the status of their alert, but they're very mobile, they'll walk around, they'll look, they'll communicate. So it's all about, again, peeling away the layers if you want to take on an assassination which will be embedded Metal Gear style inside a building in the center of that level / arena. That's something we need to talk about. Talking of the casuals, if you're still listening, I have never felt like one so much as to handing in the end of mission on this game. It will give you a list of all the crap you missed, and it'll be like 0 of 16 bones found, 0 of 1 secrets. And it's basically, you didn't even touch the sides by just wandering around as much as you could and completing that main objective. It does remind me of a run system. It automatically asks you if you want to restart that level and get that score better. Rebellion games do this fantastically, and I feel it gives content loads more longevity. That non-minimap system means that you generally need to have a line of sight towards an enemy, and that's why that lean system, which was very early on in its life cycle with gaming, was really important, because you had to pop around a corner. You couldn't afford that sort of wandering into a room, because you do die very quickly. They don't hold back. If you're in a group setup, you won't be able to keep up with the parrying, and you'll have to use weaponry, which you don't want to do in an ideal situation. And again, it will give you that score at the end of the mission, non-lethal, did you kill anybody, how many civilians got murdered, there was an incident. Innovative kills are also a thing, and multiple directions towards your target is like so well played out that you'll by mistake genuinely take a different route if you die to go towards the assassination, and then just realize that you could have dropped an anvil on the guy's head from just chopping a rope in the room above. You saw the steam scene room earlier. It's a horrific way to get rid of an enemy, but it was something that made me feel like my character. And that's another thing, is he's completely badass, cold-hearted, and on a hellbent revenge mission, which is one of the better laws for a single-player video game protagonist. Gotta get to this alternative tech timeline. It feels so well thought out and deep. It's like it's been brought out from a novel or something. Everything's really confidently made with this Victorian style steampunk angle, but you've also got this brutalist metal everywhere. There is electricity, they use whale oil and blood for their fuel. It's one crazy universe.
Huh? Look out there. What now? These men.
Ordnance does also play a heavy role, so this plays a little bit like a Bethesda classic game, with a lot of the things on the ground not being like weapons or actual upgrades. It's all about those resources, getting the dollar and going to the shop and actually purchasing upgrades. You never technically change the system or setup that you have with the pistol or with the crossbow, but you push things into it to make them more efficient. Same goes for that blink jump, and you get some majorly cool vision and a time slowdown. I feel that time slowdown is a little bit OP, but we haven't even got to the massive selling point for the whole series itself, particularly front end. So yeah, there's animal and people possession. A bit like Prey, you can just take over a rat, go into a little drain pipe, and then pop out into the middle of the arena right next to the guy you're supposed to be assassinating. That's cancelling out all those cool electricity traps, having to dodge people's lines of sight, and neck stabs. You just bang there. I find it way too easy a system to abuse, but you can only really use the grill system where they put it. So the developers are aware of how easy a system that is to get round.
Yeah, he came too early. Maybe don't touch the charger. Let me sleep. Okay, good.
Look at how good this game looks still. It also reminds me weirdly of a Victorian London. When you look at the loading screen, there's like a mechanical Big Ben. That's like a miniature London Bridge. So crazy how much effort went into making sure this world is really believable and felt lived in. Things are dirty, there's rats everywhere, loads of levels have sewage and tunnels beneath them, so you can take alternative directions, really change the scenery up. Just in the one arena, I was clocking an hour and 20 minutes on average on each of these missions.
Oh, I'll find you.
I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of, what its main sort of competitor is, also modern day, and it does feel a little bit like the newer Deus Ex games. And as mentioned before, all sort of crossbow in the left hand with the differences in darts does have this barrel at sea vibe also, and I can't help but get that impression from some of these enemies. There was those dudes with the cones that came through. These guys are almost the same with like sound boxes that won't let your plasmids in inverted commas work on them. There's also that infiltrating social events under disguise. You don't have to find the disguise. Some levels are just laid out that way. Coincidentally, everybody's wearing eyes wide shut masks. But you're following an individual, waiting for them to get in a secluded area. There's so many Hitman vibes with that alarm system as well. And with the DSX, someone will just be running towards the fact that they're going to ruin your entire playthrough by hitting one button. It ends up into a cat and mouse chase. I do love that angle. And working out what all the alarms are, or even with this, you can rewire them. The same goes with the electric gates. You can turn them onto your side and then cheese the enemy through them. But I'll talk about that time slowdown quickly. It works off that blue bar, and you can, if you're prudent enough, stack up the refill for that particular element. So when you start running out, you just quick select and retake it, making the time increase that's slowed down. You can be in this damn thing for over a minute if you've got the resources. That turns a situation that would otherwise be a brick wall become ridiculously easy, but it's still fun, and experimenting with it, there's so much joy to be had here. I do want to talk about the walkers and the tougher enemies. I feel them a little bit spoiler. They were put on the trailers though. Those and the rats were a major selling point to me back then. And they're as awesome as they look and sound. They've obviously got higher vision detection and they're walking around with the RPG. So they're almost insta-kill if they can get a clean shot on you. But they do take punishment and they do go down, and it's a great feeling of empowerment getting past one. One of my last points, and we are going to move on to the second one in a second, and this goes for both games, is it's got an incredible friendly fire system that comes from the enemy's direction. They keep shooting each other, and it is one of the funniest things you'll see in gaming.
Guards, to me! We're not taking this one alive!
I also can't really show you too much more of Dishonored 1 because we're coming up to story spoiler territory, and this game takes a massive twist. I very much enjoyed the direction it took. Is it the better of the two games? Well, let's move on to Dishonored 2. What's its subtitle? Oh, there isn't one. Third one that's got a subtitle. We will get to that at the end of the video. It was the definitive edition of Dishonored 1. I forgot to mention that on PC, all that DLC and those extra mission standalone stuff, which I did not look at.
I see this thing working as it should.
That's it. The Lord Regent's done. Farewell to Hiram Burrows, you scheming piece of shit.
Out into the world once more. How many people had forgotten this mask?
So it's set 15 years in the future. This game came out in 2016. It feels like 15 years graphically. And what the hell was wrong with this guy? He must be dead? Fired? Gone? Heart attack maybe? 15 years? He didn't look too good in the first game, but we're introduced to a lot more sunny vibrancy. The colours loads more vivid. I was gobsmacked at how pretty this game is. It really does take your breath away, trying to take your eye off what changes have come about with it being a sequel. And thankfully, there aren't too many.
5 times.
No! Damn it!
Everything on a control front is in the right place. It's excellent with making the shift from this one to the second one. I was playing them simultaneously. It was crazy. It was like I got bored of a mission, I would just switch over to this, but it was just the bedazzlement of its visuals that got me every single time. It's one thing having a world like this to muck around with. It's another thing having the world look like this.
Traveling on ship horrifies me. It's on that. The ocean Venus is force.
The first major change that you'll notice is that the upgrade system is far more detailed and staggered. You don't get that time slowdown till a lot further back, and there's sort of incremental adjustments that you couldn't make in the previous game. Whether they improve things or not is another kettle of fish. You've also got the aesthetic taking a sort of slide towards Europe, I feel, with a lot of the colours and the almost period decor. It's strange, it's not as gritty, it's not as dungeon-like as the original game. Dunwall was really a Victorian steampunk London. This feels like some sort of hybrid Venice. Enemy AI and detection system seems to also be identical, despite it being a younger game. There doesn't seem to be too much moved around in that direction. It also goes for their statuses and all of your vision specials. Everything is just plonked right down on the identical spots of the original game. I'm pretty sure that there's more variety on a lot of the kill animations. Not too much more blood, if anything that may have been toned down a little bit, and the pistol feels ballistically a little bit more confident. That would explain some of that engine improvement, but the smoke and the rat shadows, which is something you can choose to turn on and off, are definitely noticeable on the detail front. And it's got the classic keyhole system, which I didn't mention in 1.
Hello.
You won't get away!
The The story also is not grabbing me with both hands. However, every time I start a new area, go into a new town, or look at some of the locals and start walking around, soaking things up, I really start warming over to the idea of this game. It's just very different despite its identical controls and meta to its original on aesthetic. That classic pub hub has also gone with some of those colours and the feel. You're on some boat out in the middle of nowhere. It feels a bit like that new Colossus Wolfenstein with that system on the secluded tiny submarine that you have to go back to after each mission. Also may have foreshadowed a point there with mentioning the Wolfenstein games. The more I think about it, the more these three games align with those. We'll talk about that at the conclusion, but back to this game's performance. I'm actually running it on Ultra, can you believe it? Because I'm down at 1080, I get 60 frames per second. It clatters on and looks spectacular at points, but it did shift down to around 50-55 in built-up central parts of town. So I might have to make some minor adjustments, but still pretty thirsty.
Take it!
Come on, let's finish this.
With all of those graphical additions and fidelity, combat obviously feels far more immersive, but the two models are identical and I don't really put one in front of the other just on a visual level. This game doesn't have the maximum amount of rats that you saw in the predecessor. It leans more on these mutant mosquito moth things, which I find quite terrifying, and it does kind of work. You have to throw bodies in just as normal, and they exist in and around these funny hive systems, and there is some cool backstory, doctor development, experiment, lore going on with it all, but it's a very separate story to the Dunwall material. Hang on cue, you just walk around a corner and just get greeted with some absolutely stunning architecture, lighting, decor, and just scenery. It is all spectacular when it wants to be.
Hey! Who are you?
You aren't going anywhere.
I've got just the thing for you.
I'll tear you to pieces.
I've been fighting scum like you since I put on the uniform.
You won't get away. What's going on here?
So what's with all the sort of non-excitement then? It just feels like that story is not grabbing me, and I feel that the world the original created and its surprise coming into the industry, being such a new IP and built on really nothing and making that bigger name for itself, was quite a feat. This one does build up on it, but builds down on a lot of the atmosphere that original game created.
That sounds like broken glass.
Getting comedy things to happen in the game is quite easy, however, and it'll often stand enemies right next to big glass tanks full of those killer mosquito things, and the dogs will just go for anybody if they're terrorized enough. You can also blind stuff with darts. You get that Assassin's Creed unwinding of a situation that you create that you watch from a distance. These roller coaster scenes are pretty damn weird, and that's the level transition screen, which I think may be masking some load-ins because they're quite big, and you do get a few transitions on each of the stages, which are just as large as the original game. Again, clocking up over 60 minutes on some stages.
You aren't going anywhere! Come on! Let's finish this!
One of the main things I wanted to accomplish with this video is to point out to Dishonored 1 fans that there's more of that really good stuff in Dishonored 2, and now that you can whack it on Ultra on a mid-range PC and get it all on Game Pass for next to nothing, means that you need to visit it if you're into that original game. If you may have come into the series on the second one, which is quite common, look at stuff like Street Fighter 2, and never gone back to the original Dishonored, you're going to be so pleasantly surprised, and you're not going to suffer a huge eye bleed on graphic downgrade. As you've seen at the start of this video, it's a cracking looking piece of software still, and it is really purified on what you would have found in Dishonored 2. Let's talk about the third installation. Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. Now this is such an applicable footprint, because if you look at the Wolfenstein games, the modern ones, under the Bethesda umbrella as well, technically, you have a cracking first game, a mid-second, and an absolutely terrible third entry. We have an identical system here, absolutely down to the wire. I did not even install the third one, because I remember it on launch, and I'm just like, no thanks. We're living in a video game development period where we may have to go to our back catalogs, which is not a problem. We might have to do it for a couple of months, maybe even a year, to give these companies the message that you need to get good, creative, decent people back in, not political activists or someone with an axe to grind or an external piece of grief. No, people with love for the industry. I remember them. We all do.
I invite you to continue, stranger. Just come up the stairs. Meet with me face to face in the upper hall.
And if you're still sitting at the back there, casual, well done. You made it through. I made a man of you. You're a gamer now. I'll see you down there.
Small fry like me always gets the worst of it. But maybe it's going to be different now.